Yo, what is up everyone? This is the Twice Over Film Club and I'm your host Faraz. Today we're discussing Before Sunrise with Fahad and Farhan. Now, not everyone is a fanboy of the trilogy like Farhan and myself, so we're just gauging interest with this film to see if you want us to do the other two films. And if you want to get in on the episode with us for Before Sunset or Before Midnight, hit us up and let us know. In that same vein, if you got a movie suggestion for us, tell us at the Twice Over on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or Letterboxd or even TikTok. Yes, we technically have a TikTok. Alright, so here's our discussion. Of course, there will be spoilers, so hopefully you got your watch in or you've seen this film before. Let's get into it.
Wait, are we getting into it?
Yeah,
Look, with the narrative, I'm not criticizing it for being just a series of conversations. I like movies like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the conversation, the content of the conversations that I had trouble with, and the characters.
The writing, you mean?
Right.
Okay.
I found one of the characters to be insufferable. That's Jesse's character.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really, Jesse? I was going to say
Interesting.
Celine. Yeah. Insufferable.
Interesting.
Okay.
Insufferable, him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially early on in the movie, and then he kind of grows on you because he gets away from like his own philosophies, and
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
so
more of a romance. But early
so
on,
what is it that was insufferable? Was it the content? What he was saying, or was it the way that he was acting? The way that
Both.
the character was coming off.
everything you said, the way he's coming off, the philosophies he holds, his opinions, his acting. A lot of the scenes early on, he had these weird, smug, punchable faces that he was putting on, and
Yeah.
But here's the thing though, Fahad.
yeah, that's his
The fact
character.
that he made you feel that way, that's brilliant acting. That's brilliant acting, right? Because actually, and my wife watched this with me, and she was like, Celine is intolerable. And we
Really?
watched the whole series together.
Okay.
I watched them. We just did them all because we couldn't stop. I don't know how you can, but we couldn't stop. But I mean, that's great acting. The fact that he made you feel that way, and the fact that he made you feel uncomfortable,
Yeah.
exactly what his character is meant to do.
I get that.
My opinion is this, that I think instead of insufferable, I would say, especially early on, he was coming off very awkward. But again, I think he was meant to come off awkward. I mean, he's breaking the ice kind of very determined to do so. And it's still natural. You know, it's awkward, but natural. So I thought it was like very good acting. I guess his opinions or like the beliefs he held and the philosophies that he was talking about with Celine, it didn't bother me. It's just individuals like perspective on life. I assume he's like mid-20s or something. He seems to be out of school.
I would say early 20s, just figuring out his life post college.
Yeah, so exactly. So I assume like it fits the character, the way the way he was thinking and the way he was talking even, and the topics he was choosing to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
That's very true. So here's something I feel like I should say. So this movie is basically start to finish, space-wise, like in terms of time, this is 95% dialogue.
Yeah.
Correct? There's rarely any space.
No, I think
like
there's scenes where they're just like walking, and there's like a lot of transition scenes. But I know what you're talking about. Like, there's a lot of scenes where it's going to be like shot from like a zoom lens far out, right? It's going to be a broad scene, and then when they actually zoom in, it's going to be conversations.
But I mean, okay, so like maybe 90% then.
Sure.
There's a lot of dialogue, right? This
Yeah,
is
there is.
a very, very, very dialogue. I mean, you send us the script, and it's going to take me 3 minutes just to scroll through the script on fast scroll,
Yeah.
I thought watching this movie the first time, the second time, the first 50 times that it was scripted. Or that it was not scripted, sorry. And that it was improv. And that they were given a guideline on where to go. Like, you see shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm doing that. A lot of shows where everything just seems so natural. But it's because it's not scripted. And they just have a general guideline. They're like, somehow we have to get from this point to this point. And we're just going to do it organically.
Yeah.
Everything in this movie was scripted.
Yeah.
So the level of concentration, or I guess the level of awareness to be like present in the scene as that character in the moment that it takes to do all of that dialogue and nail it down so that it looks like it was improv, to make it look like it was organic, and fooled somebody who had watched the movie. I'm not even kidding you. Probably 50 times I'll watch this movie. And I just learned for this last time at looking at trivia that none of it was scripted. That's insane. Did you know it was scripted, Froz? Or,
I had seen like an interview with Richard Linklater talking about this, and he said that like his initial script was very bare. Like he had basically what you said. Like he knew point A, knew point B, and he had like general ideas of what the conversations would be about. But the actual script, so this is probably helps a lot with the acting here, is that Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, they really had a heavy hand on the script. So they really filled in a lot of those lines. But it was still scripted. It's not like they, ad-libbed it while they were just acting and then it was kept in the film. Because he said that he likes to take that approach sometimes to let them just do something organic and see if it's worth keeping. But he's like, he never gets like a budget to like let that happen. He can't just waste time, Like he has like 20 days to film this, so he's going to get it done in those 20 days. So he wanted to make sure the script was complete and finished, and but you're so right, Farn. It's how natural it feels. I think it comes off as awkward in the beginning. Again, it's just because
Can we try to define what it is about the conversations that feels natural? Is it the meandering nature of it? Like
it's the reactions to so here's what it is for me. And then Fraz, you can kind of chime in just whenever you see fit, man. I mean, for me, the reason that the dialogue is so natural, not even just the dialogue, it's the reactions. That's why I'm giving acting and writing both 95 scores on this. Nearly perfect. Not perfect. In my opinion, they're not perfect. It's not 100. There are some spots where I think that they veered off of making things what would be realistic for the character. But for the most part, 95% of the time, when one person says something, reaction that the other character has is something that's very telling, one, of the character, and it's very, very natural in terms of that's exactly what somebody might react like when they first meet somebody and they're flirting with them and they're trying to get their attention. It's just so many things, but obviously the content of the writing is also it's not very, I don't want to say wordy. Like help me out here, Fraz. It's not like crazy vocabulary where it doesn't make sense. All of the dialogue is,
right. The dialogue,
who the characters are, and
exactly, these characters are figuring out their lives, their philosophies, their views on everything, right? They're talking about breakups, about love and everything else. So they don't use fancy vocabulary.
Right.
They keep the conversations simple to understand because they want that improvisational style where the characters seem like they're thinking through these things right then and there, like they haven't had the chance to think about it at a time prior, right? Okay, so they try to achieve that style where it seems like they're coming to conclusions right then and there as they're talking to each other. Like one person's bringing some insight and they're thinking about what the other character just said, and they're just adding their own little words to it, right? Some of that felt forced to me, and that's where I had a problem. Like
and
a lot of,
and that's why I said it's not all perfect.
They didn't feel deserved. Right.
I see.
Like they're coming to these grand statements and it comes.
Here's the thing. So for one thing is that this is 1995, the first movie that either of these people did like this, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that to consider. And yeah, I after this is not my 51st time watching this movie, I know exactly what you mean, right? One person, it's like a series of monologues, right? And that's kind of that's sort of what you're hinting at here. It's like they're like one person says something and then another person, like it seems forced that they're like, okay, let me think about this for a second and let me add on to it. Is that what you're talking about, kind of? Kind of,
yeah. I'm not saying that they just took a monologue approach and they're just like reading off lines, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean that is one of my criticisms for the writing. Okay, is that I wish that some of it was pieced together a little bit better.
But as in that, like there was more back and forth and a little more
yeah,
like breaks
yeah, maybe
in
a
the
little bit more
conversation.
between their ideas, you know.
Yeah.
She goes off for 5 minutes, you know, and then he goes off for 5 minutes, and then she goes off for 5 minutes. And if that was not the case, and they pieced it together, meaning like, you know, there was a more natural maybe interruptions or
like they disagreed
showing
with
somebody
each other.
thinking about to say something, and then somebody says something else, and they do quite a bit of that actually. But
Yeah.
I wish they did a little bit more of that. But the rest of it is just so damn good that I knock 5 points because of that. And that's it.
So Fahad, I actually felt that there were some forced moments too, but it was at the very beginning when the conversation is being forced, like the topic is being brought up, and it just felt like it's just a weird way to bring up a conversation. But once it gets going,
Yeah.
like I was engaged in it.
Does anything come to mind specifically? Like, is it the train scene? Is it the church scene? Is it the dinner?
One scene that comes to mind is I think they're on the trolley when they first get off in Vienna, and he's like, "All right, we're gonna play this game." I think it was Truth or Dare, right? And like she has to they have to ask a question and they have to answer. They can't lie in their answer, and the way he just brought that up was like forced. But then once they were in the conversation, it was enjoyable for me. But yeah, I mean, the big thing that we need to talk about here is this is a couple that's clearly they're interested in one another, right? Like this can't work if one side was remotely less interested. They have to be equally interested in one another. And what is really good about this movie is that neither individual, Jesse or Celine, are, I guess, they're not.
They don't presume that the other person's interested in them.
No,
they're not desperate.
Neither of them are desperate, that's for sure. Well,
I mean, they are, but they're trying to show like they're not in the beginning. I don't want to. Desperate is not the right word, but they're not. I don't know what word you're trying to think of.
I guess I'm trying to say who's leading the relationship, right? It comes off maybe Jesse is initially because he's the one who initiates the main conversation and tells her that she should get off the train. But then my favorite scene in the movie is when they're at the bar or cafe. I think it's the bar. No, it's a cafe, and they play the little phone game where she's in a call. Yeah. And like that's where we learn about each of their intentions for one another, like what it was like at the very beginning even, and like you begin to understand that they're both like it's a very equal relationship here, very equal in interest, and that's why the conversations just flow so well and it works so well to me. Well, I will say one thing I hated at the very beginning when Jessie would like move her hair out of the way. I was like, it's just awkward.
Well, when they were on the train, right? Not on the train, but on the bus.
Yeah, bus or trolley.
Or what about the record store listening session?
Oh, that was awkward. But again, that was naturally.
Wait. Hold on. You didn't. So you guys didn't like those scenes?
It's not.
Those are some of my favorite. Those are some of my favorite parts. I have that part written here, because. Well,
they're awkward.
I don't know if you want to go into this, but
I'm just saying.
Right, they are. No, they are. But that's the. So here's the thing, right? If I watched that scene, like. I watched it this time around. When I watched it 3 times. The one where he goes to move her hair out of her face.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that happen there. And the fact that it's all scripted is mind-boggling to me. Because he goes to put his arm sort of like around, like he goes to put his arm around her, and she like walks away for us. Like she moves away a little bit, but then she moves closer to him. In that moment is when he goes to like move her hair or something. I forgot actually. Shit, I don't remember where I was going with it.
Is this in the listening booth? This is in the listening booth, right?
No.
I'm
watching the listening booth right now. The listening booth is more like missed glances where they're like looking at each other, but then when the other it's like this,
that's a genius scene.
Yeah, I mean they're flirting and they don't want to be caught looking with the look of like admiration or something like. You know what I'm talking about, right?
They're being shy,
awkward, flirtatious. Yeah. The scene works absolutely, but then there's also little things going on that don't work, like Ethan Hawke biting his lower lip and sticking his tongue out weirdly. I was like, what is he doing?
When did he stick his tongue out a little too much for sure? No, Jesse bites his lip way too much.
Yeah, but so here let me break down like kind of the characters then. Yeah. I guess we should do that, right?
Sure.
Jesse is a
he's an American traveling through Europe. with
Right.
a train pass. And
Very
he's-
easygoing, right?
Yeah, and he's in
Down to
this
earth dude.
aimless state of mind because he's traveling across Europe with no purpose.
Yeah.
And he's aimless also because he's just broken up with his girlfriend.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Go with the flow, dude.
Yeah.
He has his like very sort of grand ideas about things sometimes, but you could tell for the most. I mean, he's not a very, what's the word I'm looking for?
They both seem like they're well read, like they're
Yeah.
well educated, like they
Yeah.
make some literary references, I think.
Right. But he seems like he's kind of like messy a little bit maybe.
Sure.
But he's a very like laissez-faire attitude, right? His approach to romance or to wooing somebody is that it comes off as uncomfortable to some people and creepy to some people, and to other people, I mean, I would know people exactly like that, and that's exactly what his character is supposed to do, and he's making those flirting glances when she's looking away. You know what I mean? In the beginning, it's just because like he's just so enamored by her, but he's also, I mean, it's just this weird way of like flirting. You know what I mean?
That exchange, that's movie making 101, like romance movies 101. Like every movie's gonna have that. What else does it bring? What does Linklater?
Not every movie. No, every movie does not have that.
Is natural. Like, so what Farhan is saying, he's pointing out that while it is awkward and even cringeworthy, like, especially with the biting of the lip and all that stuff, it's it comes off as very natural as a body of work of like who that character is. So while it may be awkward, it's still natural.
Yeah, it's exactly who that guy is. It's exactly who he is. I disagree with you. That's not
in every movie or every.
That's not in every love movie or
romance.
Romance. What did you say?
Romance.
Romance. It's not in every romance movie. If we've done some romance movies where they'll have one scene or two scenes where, they look at each other a certain way. It's like, oh, that's great. No, this is an entire movie and long takes.
Yeah,
where they are consistent with that character, right?
Right, because of the pacing.
And he's not the only one.
Like, they try to keep you in that moment for longer. Where you're seeing the same thing over for like 20, 30 seconds.
Right.
Other movies.
And he's not the only one. I mean, she has her own kind of mannerisms too.
For sure.
And from the very beginning as well. So it's not like he's just like coming on strong. They're both coming on strong from the very beginning.
They're both into it.
And they both have their own ways of doing it. They have their own ways of drawing, and they have their own ways of chasing. You know what I mean? So and so we broke down his attitude, right? And that's just kind of his thing. And her character, she's like this French, very, very feminist, believes in like the power of women. What's the word? No, independent. Like that kind of woman. Like
strong-minded, strong-willed.
Strong-minded, strong-willed. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, those are great words for sure. And so everything that she does is in tune with that character. She goes back and forth on so many things throughout this movie. That's what my wife was really kind of annoyed about this girl, because
she
changes her mind on things. Huh?
Like she challenges Jesse and his beliefs.
Yeah.
I would say she doesn't enough.
Well, but that's the thing, right? How much are you going to challenge somebody that you're trying to attract?
Sure.
Before
Sure.
they're no longer attracted. And there are some things that really bothered her.
Yeah.
But she didn't say anything in the moment, and she actually said it later on, right?
It's the fortune teller scene, right? She was pissed off that he was being like cynical and like he wasn't letting her have any fun with it, right? It's like you go to a magician's performance and there's this one annoying dude who's trying to tell you how the trick works. No, you don't want to know how the trick works. You want to be fooled. And so with the fortune teller, she was just trying to enjoy the moment, and he comes off as a total prick. There's also another scene where he does something similar. It was where he
poet?
the bum, the poet.
Yeah.
And he tries to break down like, that's how he
he's like, he just puts in the word milkshake into whatever his thing is.
Yeah.
But he stops himself, right? Like he doesn't, because she's already told him at this point that annoyed me what you did with the palm reader, and he wants to say like the same thing with the poet, and he's like, never mind, let's forget it, and then just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's somewhat self-aware. He knows like he
Yeah,
shouldn't
so
be saying that
exactly.
stuff, but then
And it
he
comes back
can't
to the same
resist.
thing, like how much is he gonna challenge her on something like that
Mhm.
when he likes her? You know, he doesn't want to make her upset.
Yeah. I have to get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Okay. The scene with the fortune teller and the scene with the bum doesn't bother me as much.
Hmm?
And that one doesn't really bother me much
Okay,
at all,
sure.
actually. The fortune teller scene, that was cringy, right? Because that is what you would see in your standard romance, whatever film. Because that was not in tune with the rest of the movie. The fortune teller, some random fortune teller in Vienna, has good enough English, good enough command of English to say you need to resign yourself to the awkwardness of life.
Yeah.
Only then are you going to find whatever. Come on. Like, that doesn't make sense at all. She said, you're both stardust. Don't forget, you're both stardust. I don't know how to say stardust in any other language.
How do you say it in Urdu?
I don't know. I have no idea how to say it in Urdu.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't even know how to say you need to resign yourself to the awkwardness of life in Urdu or Spanish or any other language I've studied. Now this random person in Austria is saying it.
Yeah,
Those
those,
are
phrases
like-
don't translate well.
No, they don't. They don't.
Right.
And when she's saying it too, it's just the way that the camera is on her. That is forced, and that is the only scene. The poet scene was a little bit like that, but it was done way better. But that scene was forced. Okay, and that's. I like that they have that in this movie because you can see the difference between the rest of this movie and that one part. And that one part is what most romance films are. Things that are out of place. There's good sounding words coming out of someone's mouth that they would never be saying in real life.
It's like
You know?
it's like a bunch of truisms on romance and life and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
truisms.
That sequence of events in the movie, the fortune teller at the cafe outside, and then the walk along the riverbank, and then the bum, like that's really when I felt like their relationship, like that's when they started opening up to one another. And this is also like, you know, once the sun has finally actually set,
Mhm.
so it's actually dark outside. I don't know. I felt like that was the moment where any new conversation that they were having, or any conversation for that matter, didn't feel forced or awkward to me anymore.
Yeah, it's
Like it
most
just felt
definitely.
like,
They
all right,
felt
these guys are now like good friends and they're just having a good conversation.
yeah,
Mm.
like they're having fun and they're being open.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not
At
like
this point,
guarding.
like, they're
their
not even
beliefs.
chasing anymore or like trying to gauge one another. Now they're just like being themselves.
Yeah, they're being open. They
Yeah.
trust each other enough to be vulnerable, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's
And then
That's
from a
kind of the thing.
romantic point of view, like a romantic interest, not just like the friendly nature that they were, like, I mean, obviously there was always that romantic underlay or in all their conversations, but again, that going back to that scene when they do the fake phone calls back home,
Yeah,
that's probably when they kind of profess their love for one another
yeah.
in an indirect way, which I thought was a great scene and a very
was a great
well written scene, well acted scene. I mean, just again, this is where reactions are everything, right? Because
Oh yeah.
they're they're really opening up indirectly, right? They're and you every time, you know, someone says something and, you know, it's like to their amusement, like they're excited that, you know, Jesse's excited that Celine felt like that. You know, you can see it in his face, and the same thing the other way. I mean, it was just great.
Yeah, I can go on forever about moments in this movie where the acting was just like at the pinnacle of acting. Because a lot of acting is not necessarily just saying your lines and executing those well. It's reacting the way that your character would when somebody else is saying their lines. And this movie is a masterclass in a couple of things. One, it's a masterclass in acting while reacting. And in my opinion, it's a masterclass in flirting. It's a masterclass in flirtation. Even the way that she's so embarrassed when she, in that scene that you're talking about, when she says, basically, I think he's scared of me. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's,
'Cause
you know
she
how
thinks that she's
ridiculous
being
that is
very-
because there's
she
no one
thinks
more
she's
harmless.
being very upfront with him.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
that is putting yourself out there.
And it should be noted, right? She's the one who we mentioned how Jesse's this, you know, very carefree dude who's pretty open and direct. He freezes though when they're in the what's that called? The Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
and they're looking out, and he wants to
Yeah.
kiss her, but like
Yeah.
he freezes, and she's the one who takes.
You can
takes
see the
lead there.
nerves, right? You can see the nerves. You can
Yeah,
see him being
exactly.
like jittery a little bit. Like he can't even get words out.
Yeah, exactly.
He can't even get words out. He literally says, he's like, seems like
like the moment.
this might be a good time
Yeah.
to, and then when she comes up, she's like, and to do what? And the way that she just
Oh yeah,
looks at him, man.
she's toying with him at that point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And she's toying with him the entire from the time that she sits next to him. She's toying with him the entire time. There's tiny little things that she does. One of the first lines of dialogue that she has is when they're first talking, and she's like, what are you doing here? She looks down, very strategically. She looks down, or like looks at him, but then like looks away, like very briefly. So when she says something like, so has this trip around Europe been good for you? That's like one of the first lines of dialogue when they first, start talking.
Mm-hmm.
And she subtly bites her lip just out of nowhere for a split second. That is a desperate move. Like that's
As in, like she just put herself out there.
she put herself out there. That's a hungry move. That's thirsty. You know what I mean? But she did it for just a split second, being like, I'm not gonna show him that I'm like really going after it, but I'm here. You know what I mean? And the way that she laughs when he says whatever his piece of dialogue is, like she's putting on the charm for him, like very strongly. So it's not just him, and she's doing things like that, little things like that. They both are throughout the whole
and she
movie.
admits it, right? She admits it later in the movie that she was like she purposely chose to sit there in the first place.
And you know what's crazy in that scene that you're talking about when she's talking to her friend, right? So this is a scene, by the way, when they're in the cafe and they agree to call their friends who were supposed to pick them up from the airport, or they were supposed to have lunch with in Paris, and tell them why they couldn't be there. So she calls her friend and she says, I met this guy and this happened. Faraz, what did you say just before I started talking about that?
Well, you should mention that the other person, so if it's Celine calling her friend, Jesse's the one who's acting as a friend.
In that scene, she says, I fell for him when he was talking about seeing his grandmother's ghost.
Yeah.
When he was a little child. And I knew that when I watched it this time, I knew that line wasn't like that was going to come later. So I watched during that scene in the very beginning when he's talking about his grandmother.
Yeah.
And you can see her falling for him. You can see the exact moment that she falls for him.
Now
It
I
was
gotta go
just
back
incredible.
and see that.
Yeah,
Now you're going to go
same.
back. Now you want to go back and see it, right? Like there's just so many things that just are well thought out, right? And I think that's the difference
But
between just having a script for people to act out and having the actors make the script, which they didn't get any writing credits from what I understand on this movie, but they did on Before Sunset and Before Midnight.
Yeah.
Farhan,
I got to check on
And
that,
like
but
Richard Linklater himself has said that they had a heavy hand on the script.
Farhan,
yeah.
the conversation you mentioned about this dude seeing his dead grandma,
Mm-hmm.
what's its significance? Is it significant because in itself, or is it more so because he's opening up about a memory or it's a vulnerability?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I'm not going to act like I know for any of this, by the way. I'm not going to act like I know everything that's going on, but I mean, no, to me, the way that I read it is just that he's using this, this moment to show her that he's sentimental. Again, this is in the first 2 minutes of them talking
Mhm.
that he tells this story. Maybe
but
4
this
minutes.
is also
but
like in the context of the conversation, right? They're talking about them
knowing about
how
death,
like
their parents,
how he
yeah.
was raised as a kid,
right.
and like he says something about him. He always felt like his parents were bullshitting him or something, and he could always tell when someone was doing that.
Yep. Yeah.
Um.
Because she talks about how her parents, the way that her parents were like.
They were always in love and stuff, and yeah.
I think that comes later, the love stuff.
Okay.
But she talks
very
about how her
practical.
relationship with her grandmother, and then she talks about something about like death, and then he's like, yeah, I always had a good eye for BS. My parents always, when they told my grandma passed away, they told me that I was never gonna see her again, but I saw her, and I know that I saw her. She was, I saw her in that rainbow or whatever. So part of me thinks, because of the way that he's built his character, that he's just using that to show her, look, I'm sentimental. Look at this cool sentimental idea. Another part is that he's just opening up, and that's just how he is with people, and especially people that he's attracted to and drawn to. He's just gonna tell them everything about himself, and he is open, and he is vulnerable enough, you know. And that's part of why she falls for him.
I mean, at the end of the day, this entire movie, this is one night, right? This is like maybe, I don't know, 12 hours they spent together.
Yeah.
They're discovering one another, really, and all these conversations. I mean, they kind of seem like they're out there sometimes because, like we said, they're, you know, high level or, you know, philosophical ideas like love and death and just getting along with one another.
Yeah.
And like, you know, having dreams and aspirations and what they want to do and purpose. All that stuff is really them not knowing, obviously, where they are going in their life because they're still young. But at the same time, they're discovering each other. And in doing so, obviously, discovering themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Julie Delpy is she's not really known for, to us, she's not known for much outside of the Before series, right? For this movie, she beat out Jennifer Aniston and Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm not saying that they're great actors, but like that's what, I mean, they looked for so many people for this role.
Oh, yeah, I should mention, because the same interview with Richard Linklater that I watched, so he had Ethan Hawke already like set to go from the very beginning.
Okay.
So Ethan Hawke like has seen the script and was like, I'm gonna do this movie, despite like apparently you know
he had to audition for it.
Well, he technically had to audition for it because Richard Linklater wanted to see who he would have best chemistry with. So it just happened to be Julie Delpy at the very end. 'Cause he said Julie Delpy was the third actress that he had done an audition with. And, you know, I don't know how many, he never mentioned like how many he did total, but he came back to her as like the final five, as one of the final five. And that's when Ethan Hawke came in as well. And they did lines together. And that's when he's like, it's gotta be Julie Delpy.
And then they decided to place it in Europe? Because otherwise, with American actresses, it could have been placed.
No, I think by then they had decided it was going to be Vienna. He probably should just link this interview with Richard Linklater. He said that he was at the Vienna Film Festival. It was the first time he had been in Vienna, and before like Vienna was a setting, like 4 years prior, like when he first like thought of the movie, he was thinking about like San Antonio or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But then when he saw Vienna, when he was there, he's like, I want to do it here. And maybe, like, I don't know who the other actresses were that were going to play a European. But he also says in that same interview that he didn't care if, you know, the guy was European or the girl was American or like whatever nationality, like whatever ends up being is what it's going to end up being. And it just ended up being French and American.
And I think that's kind of interesting because a lot of the appeal in this relationship is that he's an American dude and that she's a French girl.
You think so?
To me, at least, right?
For him, at least?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the initial appeal is because of that, and they make a lot of jokes about that, and they play off of that a lot. You know.
Yeah.
A lot of her charm is because she's French and she's not. Her English isn't perfect. You know.
The only time I remember her mentioning her nationality is when she refers to this common misperception amongst people that people think French ladies are strong-minded, strong-willed, or something. Do you remember that? And that's the only time they
but she says it a couple. There's several.
Oh, are there?
There's several throughout the movie. Yeah, because in like the very beginning of the movie, and they're talking in the train. He's like, "Yeah, I get it. So I'm this dumb American, whatever, and you're just this French girl." And you know, there was that exchange, and then she talks about how she hates when people are like, "Oh, you were black," or when she's sad, and they're like, "Oh, they're so French and so cute." I think that might be the same kind of thing that you were talking about, though. The same scene.
Oh, okay.
There's a couple of other things that I can remember, though.
Oh, yeah. Basically, that when, like, she says, when I lose my temper or say anything, they just dismiss it and say, like, oh, that's so French or it's so cute.
Yeah. She's like, I hate that. That's one of the things that really bugs me.
Do you guys, it stood out to me that a lot of some of the conversations were about them complaining about their upbringing. Do you guys remember that at all or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's like very in the train scene, but then as well as later on when they're kind of just walking through the streets.
What does that say to you? Does that just place their age like they're...
Yeah.
Okay. That they're...
To me, at least, it places them in the rebellion stage where they're, you know...
Well, doesn't one of them mention, like, well, like, I had it pretty good, really. So, like, I don't really have a reason to be rebelling against anything.
Oh yeah,
They both do.
do mention that. Yeah.
I think they both kind of mention that. They both kind of say that. But they do sort of make it, to me, it seemed like it was clear that this is just, for her, just a natural reaction that somebody has to go through.
Mhm.
I don't remember if this is in the dialogue in particular. Do you guys?
Yeah, no, Farhan, you're exactly right. I looked it up, and Fahad. So I don't think it's just about the idea of the,
Uh-huh.
bringing up, like, placing what age they're in, but the entire idea that as individuals that we like, it's healthy to have something to rebel against. So
Yeah.
what Celine says is, my parents, they're still married, and I guess they're very happy. But I just think it's a healthy process to rebel against everything that came before.
To question everything.
Because she talks, I
Yeah.
think, just before that about how her parents were rebelling against something else. Like, I mean, I think she talks within the French political context of the war and the government, like, after the war,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, now it's just me, like, I don't, like, what do I have to rebel against?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of what's going on there. Enough credit does not go to Richard Linklater for casting, because it's very easy to just cast the biggest draw or the prettiest person, the prettiest girl and the prettiest guy for a role, right? It's very easy to do that. But this is the result. And nobody who was making this movie thought it was going to be this big. Nobody did.
Yeah, they did.
But it's literally, if you put any other two characters in here, and I feel like I've repeated myself on that so many times in this podcast, right? But casting deserves all of the praise when it comes to this kind of a movie, because if you put anybody else in those roles,
yeah,
it's just not going to succeed. And this
like,
is just going to be
chemistry
any other
is
movie.
Chemistry is so vital for it to work.
It is so vital. Literally, chemistry is everything in this movie. Most of the dialogue that happens in this movie is not said, in my opinion. You can't get that just from having two people. Just okay. You are known for all these movies, and you look great. We'll get makeup on you. You're gonna be a huge draw. Let's get somebody else who's gonna be a huge draw, and it's gonna be great. You got a killer script. No, that's all BS. It's all BS. That's why I've given this. That's why I give this in acting. They could have been saying nothing. They could have been just looking at each other in the entire movie.
No,
and I would have.
Let me push back on that. A movie without dialogue, no, it wouldn't work for us.
Just
Well, you know what?
Each other back and forth.
Watch a Chaplin movie.
There's dialogue. They talk at each other. We just can't
That's
hear
true.
it.
No, that's true. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But that's the thing, man. In real life, there's you watch all these management seminars or whatever. I'm sure all of you guys have heard of this. Like, I don't know what the statistic is, but 70% of what we say is through our body language or whatever the hell it is, right?
Yeah.
And that is so damn true, man. That is so true. So I'm gonna bring up that scene with the telephone again. When she's talking to her friend, and she's like, I hope he's not scared of me, because me, I'm the most harmed. So she says this. She says, he must be so scared, thinking I'm this manipulative, mean woman. I just hope he doesn't feel that way about me, because me, I'm the most harmless person. The only person I can really hurt is myself. And then when she delivers that piece of dialogue, right? Just hearing that itself is like, okay. But when you watch her deliver that piece of dialogue, the way that she looks down and then kind of just like looks to the side and with an embarrassed, just like whole demeanor, being vulnerable to him, that she's saying something like this, that is, that's just gold, man. That's acting gold. I'm sure that people study this when they're, if they ever have to do a role like this. I don't know how, the fact that is scripted is so crazy to me. And this whole podcast is probably me just being like freaking just, my mind just being boggled. But it's so crazy.
It's you professing your
There's
love
not
for
another
this
movie like it. Huh?
It's you professing your love for this movie.
Really, it is.
I'm surprised I'm not getting more from Faraz.
Well, I mean, Farhan is more or less like picking up everything I feel about the movie.
Yeah.
We're pretty much aligned on everything here, except for maybe I do think the writing is pretty much perfect. Yeah, there's stuff that is forced, but I mean, is there any movie that has
Unforced
as
conversations.
natural of a dialogue as or conversations as this. I just don't think so.
No.
So I'm not comparing it to like the perfect.
But ask yourself how many,
hypothetical movie,
what
I'm
percentage
comparing
of
it
the
to, like-
conversations did you enjoy listening to?
Well, here's
I-
what I'll pose a question. I'll pose in return.
Sure.
Is that the purpose of conversation in a movie, to you?
I think so. Yeah.
And if it is, that's totally cool. So for you, dialogue is supposed to be like enjoyable, like it's there for your entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm not faulting it at all.
Don't
That's-
pigeonhole me for a different movie, but for this movie,
No,
because it's-
I got
it's
you.
So
I don't pigeonhole. That's
it's a
use
framework.
Of, man. Use
It's
of
a
pigeonhole.
scaffolding for this entire movie. The dialogue is what you're supposed to enjoy. There's nothing going on visually. There's no special effects. So you're supposed to enjoy the
So-
conversation. It's like you're a
Well,
third
so here's
wheeling
what
on,
I'll.
on this date with these two people having a bunch of different conversations. If 75% of the conversations were interesting,
Mm-hmm.
let me go back a little bit. I thought maybe half of the conversations were interesting. The other half were just like, I thought were just filler. They were just like
Mm-hmm.
there.
I appreciate you bringing up that point because that is, you know how I said some people, well, this is not movie, not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what, and don't pigeonhole. I love that term. Don't pigeonhole me for this, but here's what where I will draw the distinction. Okay, the distinction. If you, I do not watch a movie. The dialogue in a movie for me is not for entertainment value. It is not so that it is not so that I enjoy it and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea. It's not that at all. The dialogue is just there to supplement the acting for me.
Yeah, I get what you're
So
saying.
when I say that
It's,
I can actually watch a movie without any dialogue, I mean it 100%. I can watch. I have to do this all day. I have to watch people's body language all day. I've been doing this throughout my whole life. I pay attention to body language. That's just one of the things that I kind of know really well, like the back of my hand, even though I have horrible body language. But that's one of the things that as a kid, I always picked up on body language. And because that says way more than anything that comes through your mouth. If the dialogue, I don't need it to be entertaining. I need it to be realistic. I need it to be true to the character and to the environment or to the situation in which it is being delivered. Does that make, that's really wordy, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just need it to be
So
true.
Fahad, let me
I don't
give you
care if
my
I don't
perspec-
enjoy it. I just need it to be true.
Let me give you my perspective, Fahad.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. The conversations themselves aren't that interesting, at least as a viewer. Like, you're like, it's them talking about themselves more or less, or their perception or perspectives on different ideas. And it's not because they don't really dig too deep into anything, right? So it doesn't really get into the level where you'd be like super interested in the topic. It's just how the conversations start at the beginning of the movie and then how they're talking to one another towards the end.
Yes.
You see how their relationship grows
Sure.
through
Sure.
those conversations.
So you're saying it's not about the
beginning to
ideas being
end.
discussed. It's more about something building between these two characters. So it's purely
Right.
romance. It's not about.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Them falling in love.
Take all of their dialogue. I'm not even kidding when I say this. Take 85% of their dialogue and just throw it against the wall. Okay? And in place of the dialogue, you can literally just say, like, when they first meet, I think you're really cute. Where are you I just need some background information on you to see if if this is even like a viable, if you're a viable person that I could spend my day or my night with. And then the person says, I also think you're cute. Here, I'm accepting your proposal for possibly getting on more with this stupid conversation,
Look,
but just
no
really
one's-
so I can
no
spend
one's
more
saying
time
that-
with
I'm
you.
not saying that
I
they
like
should be
looking
that-
at you.
I'm not saying that they should be that forward. No one is, right?
No. I know. I'm not saying that either. I'm not saying that there should be forward, but I'm saying is that when they're saying those pieces of dialogue, that's really what they're actually saying. You have to look at the words behind the words. It's what they're really saying when he's talking about his grandmother and all that stuff. He might be actually trying to get her to understand his ideas. You know what I mean? I'm not discounting that. But what is he really saying? He's saying, I'm giving you this little piece of information to show you that I'm sentimental, so that I'm a viable candidate for love.
What?
That's it. I swear, I'm not even kidding. That's what all the dialogue is in this movie.
Or
It's give and take, right? They're
Yeah, the
giving a little piece
dialogue-
of information to show that they're really interested. Somebody else is giving another piece of information so to show, oh, look, I'm interested. You look at their way that their eyes are between those pieces of dialogue, what they're doing with their hands, what they're doing with their lips. So you mentioned, well, I found it. So when they were, when he goes to move her hair, right? What happens is the hair is in the middle of her. It's like he can't see her face. She's looking down. And then he goes to move her hair. And just as she does, she notices. And then he pulls back. And then she moves her hair back. What they're talking about in that scene doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
All I read in that was him saying, I'm going to try this out. And the last second being like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. It doesn't feel right. She's going like, no, it's okay. You can pull my hair back. That's what I read.
When did this scene happen?
That's the one where you're talking about where she pulls the hair out of her face.
But where are they?
They're on the bus.
In the back of the bus when they're talking.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, right. They kind of eased around each other like after that Ferris wheel scene, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I truly think if you turn the sound off and you turn captions off and you just watch this movie, you would get the same exact effect on what their relationship is meant to be.
Fahad, the conversation in this movie was is a tool for each of them to make the other one fall in love with them.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
And we get to
But they could have made the writing more enjoyable for the moviegoer, right? If you're saying it could be anything, really. The whole objective to you was he's trying to show that he's sensitive, and her something similar, right? They could have been been talking about something more interesting, to get to the same point.
Probably, but here's what I would argue, right? That's when you turn it into a typical chick flick or a typical romance movie.
Oh, they could have been talking about like the politics or science or I don't know.
Yeah, then I just don't think it would be. I mean, and part of it they do, and part of it, you know what I think it might be actually just in the moment I'm thinking this. I didn't think about this during the thing, but I think that they tried to make the dialogue maybe more interesting. Maybe they had it one way, and then they're like, why don't we try to make this a little bit more higher level? Let's talk about all these advanced ideas that these two people, how the hell did they have here's why the dialogue sometimes didn't seem natural, and it's just a series of monologues, because there's all this information like, yeah, I read about this one study where this one guy says this and this and this, and we're all just like this. How do you remember that? And she counters with some other advanced theologian philosophical idea. I think that they might have even tried to do exactly what you're talking about, Fahad. And that's what made it seem, if anything made it seem unnatural, it was that. In my opinion, you know what I mean?
Fahad, the thing is, like, if you do that, then, I mean, any conversation, like, I think the topics they chose are pretty universal. Like, if they did choose, like, politics, I don't know how many viewers, like, you would turn off. Or if they chose like economics or something, like, come on, right?
Or how about literature? Because they both opened with, he was reading a book. They could have discussed that, right?
They could have done a little more with literature for sure.
Yeah.
For people who are really big fans of literature, this actually borrows really heavily from pieces of literature. They borrow really deeply from the ideas and all of that stuff. It's like James Joyce or something like that. I think it was James Joyce actually.
Okay.
And so the piece of literature that he like quotes and stuff like that, I think that was Joyce. I don't know much about James Joyce. I'm not going to pretend like I do, but I know that there was something like that, you know, literature-wise.
All I know is he wrote Ulysses, and it's this thick-ass book, which is impossible to read.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the stuff. There's some Easter eggs, I'm sure. I never looked into it, but
yeah.
But there is one of his stories that is basically this kind of idea where these two people meet in Italy or something like that, you know, and that's the whole thing. And honestly, really what this movie is about is a fleeting romance.
It's a fleeting moment. A
fleeting moment of romance, I would say. And we've been talking a lot about the writing and acting, man. I can literally go on forever. Here's why this movie is rated by some to be the best romance movie of all time.
Why?
This is a litmus test of if you are a romantic or if you are not.
Okay.
Right?
No. I'm gonna hit that skeptical button right there in front of me.
You don't think so?
No. I've seen plenty of romance movies.
Fahad, are you saying that you are a romantic?
No. Not whether you see romance movies. That's not what I'm saying.
It's a litmus
Whether
test
your
of
ideas
whether,
on love are romantic.
or if you have romantic.
Basically, are you a romantic or are you a cynic?
Yes.
And I would say this is not the litmus test. This movie is not the litmus test for that.
Faraz, what do you think?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that. But I think if you are a romantic, you would enjoy this movie. Like, how can you not?
Fahad, are you romantic?
Yes, I would say definitely yes.
Definitely yes. And you didn't like the well.
Here's
you
why. Here,
scored
let me
it-
explain.
You
Let me
scored
explain.
it pretty fairly, man. I'm not gonna even. I think Fahad was pretty objective here.
Yeah. No. Here, let me explain. So the reason why I say that is mostly because of the ending, and a lot of the themes has to do with the ending of this movie, which the reason why I say this is a litmus test is because do you believe they get back together in that 6 months? Do you believe they find each other, or do they not? And Fahad, you haven't actually watched the second movie,
Nope.
so what are your thoughts?
Okay, so there seemed to be most of the movie it was like these idly paced conversations. There was no urgency, right? But they both knew
Mhm.
that the day was going to end. They were going to leave. That this was just like a fleeting moment, like Faraz said.
Yeah.
The urgency really came in that scene where she was leaving him at the train, and then you could see a look of desperation, like she's not going to see him and he's not going to see her. And so for me, there was like the actual romantic passion being expressed there, whereas in previous scenes you didn't see much of that. Based on that final scene, I would say yes, they very much want to link up with each other later, like they said in 6 months. So what was your question? Whether or not they're going to get back together? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Whether or not they meet in 6 months.
yeah.
No, he answered it.
Yeah.
He thinks they will.
So here's what I'll say. Fahad and all the viewers, go watch Before Sunset.
Because they don't.
No, just watch.
I'm not saying that. Just go watch it.
I think they missed the 6 month meetup, and then they meet up 10 years later or something.
You gotta watch it, man.
Yeah, just go watch it.
Yeah, you just gotta watch it. We can't say much beyond that.
Yeah.
As far as the themes, there is obviously that major theme of this is like they know it's gonna end and everything needs to end. They talk about other things, specifically death, in a way like that. They kind of make a deal with one another, right? Like, yeah, this is gonna be it. We're gonna have this one night. We're not gonna try to
We're not going to become.
meet each other ever again. Like, we're not gonna try to do this long distance thing.
They're not going to become very emotionally invested.
Right.
They're just going to keep it loose. They're going to have
Exactly.
fun. And then they're just.
Yep,
Gonna,
they're gonna understand that just like everything has an end, this will have an
Right.
end, and it'll be just this one night. But that's like this idealistic way of thinking about it. But then when it comes time for that, like Fahad said, they're like scared that they're never gonna see each other again, and then they decide to change their mind. Like, why are we doing this? Like, why can't we just see each other in 6 months? Let's just plan to see each other in 6 months.
They were like, our previous ideas were dumb. I
Yeah.
like them.
Yeah, exactly. They
acknowledging
dismiss everything, right? All the stuff that they had just talked about, they dismiss it right
Yeah.
away. But that kind of it shows you like just how like it wasn't just them flirting with one another; like they had actually fallen in love with one another.
Yeah. No, that's very apt. And I rated this a 95 on themes. That's almost perfect. Here's why. Okay, and this says a lot about relationships, the way that they are formed, the reasons why people stay together, and the reasons why people miss chances or stuff like that, missed opportunities or whatever. And so I'm just gonna rattle off a bunch of stuff that I have in my notes. Okay.
Go ahead.
They're both kind of they're different personalities. Okay, she tries to be like this very independent, objective person sometimes, but at times clearly very emotional. He tries to be very laid back and stuff, but at times he's very objective and rational, right? The whole movie is them both clashing with both of those ideas. Are we going to be rational or are we going to be emotional, right? Like when he's talking about his dreams of being a father and a husband, he's like, sometimes that thought is silly, like he's wasting himself, and he'd rather be known for doing something good rather than being known for being in a nice, caring relationship, being a nice dad or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And that's a little bit in contrast to the character that we've seen throughout the movie, right? She says sometimes she doesn't really believe in God. She says that if there is a God, it's in the space that's between people in a relationship. If there's any kind of magic in the world, it's in the attempt at understanding each other and sharing with each other. That's a very romantic ideal. Kind of
It's also
in
very
stark
cheesy.
contrast.
I had to throw
I
it
mean,
in there.
okay, this is 1995. I guess you got to consider that a little
Look,
bit.
I'm sorry
Fahad,
I
it's
even said
cheesy,
that.
like in
Go on.
itself.
No,
like in a
that's fine.
vacuum.
No, you're good. You're good.
No, but
It is.
How do you say
100%
that's
it is.
cheesy? It's not cheesy in the context of the conversation that they're having,
Right.
and what you've gotten to know of both of these characters throughout the movie.
Right.
I didn't think it's cheesy at all.
It's cheesy as a standalone piece of dialogue, but
Yeah.
Yes, because it
Um,
seems like it's coming out of thin air.
yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't though. It wasn't at all. Because this was all in the same conversation that they're having this talk, right? And then later on when they're on that boat or whatever it is, and they're talking about when they're gonna see each other and all of this stuff, that is a fantastic scene, because all these ideas that I just talked about, they're wrestling with that at the same time. He's like,
Exactly, yeah.
I think we need to be rational, but I don't know. I mean, I'm open to it. And she's like, I don't think we're gonna see each other, right? What do you think? And again, her acting is just incredible, because you see in her face the conflict, where she's clearly he wants her to be romantic, or sorry, she wants him to be romantic and be like, no, forget all that rational BS that we just talked about. I want to see you again. Why are we not seeing it? She wants him to say yes. She wants that romance novel. And when he is like unsure and he's like trying to be rational, she goes back to his level. She's like, no, yeah, it's not even realistic. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
And then he's like, I mean, I'd hate to make you fly. And she's like, well, I'm not so scared of flying. I mean, I could. Even though in the first scene she talked about how much she hated and dreaded flying. So she's willing to get over flying just to see this guy. Again, that's a really romantic ideal. And that's relationships in a nutshell. Are we going to be rational about things? Are we just going to be rational? Are we going to be emotional and embrace that side of us? Right? And if you watch, that's just in this one movie, right? If you watch the rest of the series, the way that we see these ideas progress through the whole series, it's so great. Faraz, would you agree?
Farhan, just to,
Dude, it's my favorite trilogy, man.
100% my
nothing
favorite
comes
trilogy.
close.
Farhan,
100%. Yeah.
just to add to what you
Yeah.
said about that line between rationality and
Emotion.
Emotion,
just
yeah.
like living in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So you have two people, and obviously, neither of them want to be seen as that person who's too emotional, right? That they're
Right,
too
right,
invested
yeah.
in this. So there's that element of fear, like, what if I'm rejected? What if I come across as too
Yep.
desperate? And so there's almost that back and forth where they're like, where she's like, I could fly, and he's like, well, I don't want to make you, kind of thing, right? And they're just like
Yeah.
playing it
Mhm.
coy. And there's that element going on there
Mhm.
because they're still, I don't know why that's happening at the end of the movie, but it's still happening.
It's still happening because it's natural,
Yeah.
right?
Don't you think they would have gotten over it? I don't know, midway into the movie.
I don't know, man, because at the same time that their love is growing for one another, there's also like the fear of the other person not loving you back just as much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like where that coyness comes in, I think. Like, in my opinion, like, by that, the milkshake poem scene, like, everything after that was the most natural acting I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I was just, by that time in the movie, I was just like, man, we're just in it, and we're just seeing two people fall in love right now. It was perfect.
Another thing I liked about with what you said, they try to limit the cuts, right? So whenever they're having conversations,
Yeah.
you saw both of them in the same frame. They don't do that cutting
Right.
back and forth between faces. They did that a little bit in
Right.
the church scene and in the diner.
Yeah.
But they try
There
to
were
limit
some
it.
moments where they would focus on the other person just reacting while the other one is talking.
But it's still the same.
But they-
Yeah, you're right. It's the same scene.
Yeah, but they wouldn't cut back and forth.
Yeah.
In any case, Fahad, I'm just hoping that we can convince you to watch the next two, because I want to do the trilogy.
And even if you don't, man, it's all good. If it's not your cup of tea, and this is to
Yeah,
everybody.
if you don't, then me and Farhan are just gonna do it.
And I'm gonna say for everything in this movie and for any movies that we review, when I see things, maybe I'm reading too much into it, and maybe I'm just being a fanboy. I don't believe I am, but maybe that's totally the case. Maybe they didn't mean for any of this to happen. Maybe they were just like, we're just gonna make a movie. And if he thinks that it was all like, if he thought that was a great line, I didn't do that on purpose. If he thought that I bit my lip on it like that, I just did it because it was hurting, or I don't know. I maybe am reading into things too much. Regardless, the themes in this movie, which we couldn't really touch on, we can go on 5 episodes on this movie, and 15 on the series. This is a must. This is one of my top movies to recommend. Actually, the reason that this wasn't one of the movies is because it's a trilogy. That's one of the reasons that this wasn't one of my 5 movies in the beginning.
Farhan, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
To get a sense of which romance movies you enjoy, can you list, I don't know, your top 5? Not top 5, but really highly 5 movies you really enjoyed out of that romance genre.
I don't know. You'd have to define romance movie, man. That's the thing. You'd have to define romance movie.
Yeah, because like to me, like Cinema Paradiso comes to mind, but is it really a romance movie? Probably not, but romance is part of it.
Yeah. I mean, dude, almost every movie you can think about as a romance movie. You have to define that. You have to define that genre for me. You know what I mean, to answer that. But there's just so many. I mean, we know I love La La Land.
Okay.
But kind of for the way that the acting is in that. But the acting in that movie, and that's a 2017 or is that 2016? That's 2016. Doesn't hold a candle to this movie.
Have you seen Little Women, the 2019 version?
No. But I remember you mentioned that.
Little Women.
That you said
Let me think.
Yeah,
Who's in it?
really
I don't think
movie.
I have.
It's pretty star-studded.
Yeah.
She's in it, right?
Emma Watson.
Yeah, Emma Watson.
But it's not. It's not a romance movie because they don't focus on one relationship per se. But it's definitely falls in that same genre, I guess.
What about Elizabethtown, Jerry Maguire? These movies.
Oh yeah, those are. Elizabethtown is a romance movie I enjoy.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay. How about Pride and Prejudice?
I like it.
Okay, nice. I like that one too. How about The Notebook?
I watched it a very long time ago, and I was not a fan.
No. Okay.
But it was a long time ago. I mean, it's not something that I want to rewatch. But you know what? Ryan Gosling is in it. I'm a huge Ryan Gosling fan. But by the way, can we speak to Ethan Hawke?
Sure.
And how underrated of an actor this guy is?
Yeah, me and Farhan did.
It was First Reformed, right?
Yeah, First Reformed, and he's incredible in that as well. But like
completely different character.
I feel like people only know him for Training Day, and that's a shame. I mean, he's good in it, but like, my God, he's an incredible actor.
The range, dude, that's incredible. If you haven't seen First Reformed, I would recommend that. You have seen it. You remember Ethan Hawke in that movie, right? Really dark.
Yeah, he's like he plays this
like a
very
boating character,
morose character, kind of maybe depressed. I don't know. The ending to that movie was so bizarre that I kind of just wiped it from my brain.
We talked about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you gotta just finish. You gotta just cut it off for us because we're just gonna keep going.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. Want to see what your tally is? Check out thetwiceover.com. All the movies we've done are listed there, as well as what we're watching for the current week. Follow us at The Twice Over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you can leave us any suggestions, feedback, or comments. And if you're about it, you can also support us on Patreon. The music you hear on this podcast is from Amerigo Gazaway. You can find his work on Bandcamp and Spotify.